How do I start these again? I completely forgot. Oh, right. You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast, a podcast about all things metal and everything in between. A production of themetalrobot.com, created and hosted by Tom McKay. Okay, so this podcast is going to be a bit different. This episode of the podcast is going to be slightly different. There's obviously, we still have another topic that we want to talk about here. In this case, it's in response to Reba Mayers of Code Orange and her response to why the metal industry is, quote, falling behind some other genres. We do talk about that, but before we do that, I wanted to sit down with someone to talk about some music. So in this case, I sat down with Lindsay Schoolcraft again for the channel. We recorded an interview previously. It didn't work out because that footage got corrupted. Always have backups, kids. So we sat down again for the podcast and we talked about her upcoming album, Worlds Away. We also had some good laughs there and we had a lot of fun. So I wanted to share that interview with you on the podcast. So without further ado, let's get straight into it.
You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
When it comes to defining genre, I've never seen anybody in the metal community do it better than Lindsay Schoolcraft. She's known for her goth rock metal sound that you've heard on her solo work, also her part in the extreme metal band Cradle of Filth a while back, and also she's known for now doing harp covers of her own work. It's so diverse, it's fantastic. Now, you probably guessed when hitting play on this podcast that we're going to be talking with her about her upcoming atmospheric harp album, Worlds Away, that's due out October 9th. Well, you're wrong. She's actually not here. We're just going to be talking shit about Spotify again. I hope that's okay. Everything's going to be great for that. No, I'm kidding. She's here on the podcast. Lindsay Schoolcraft, the lovely and talented. How are you doing today?
Hey, Tom. I'm really, really good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Personally, I'm actually glad that we're doing this interview for the podcast. Less stuff to lose in corruption, but also because I essentially just rolled out of bed for this one, and I look like Ellen DeGeneres if she was thrown in the dryer on Tumble. So I'm glad that there's no cameras on me right now. It's fantastic.
Oh, and I did my face for you today, but it's okay.
Shucks. Okay. Well, damn.
Right.
Okay. Like I just mentioned, we actually did try this podcast before. Well, not the podcast. We tried doing video a few months ago. We sat here for like a good hour or so. I think I got like an hour's worth of footage out of that interview, and then, lo and behold, all the footage got corrupted. Fantastic. Let this be a lesson, kids. Let this be a lesson. Always back up all your files.
Exactly.
Because that really sucks. But you know what? It's a good thing that we actually got the chance to sit down with you again. Because this time, there is a harp album in question to talk about. We mentioned this last time as you were talking about how it's almost done. It's pretty much complete and just has to be mixed and mastered. But now it's here, essentially. It's coming out.
Yeah.
We have the name and we have, in a way, an actual single that's coming out soon with a music video, too. Mm-hmm. So I want to take this opportunity for this segment of the show to focus on Worlds Away. To say that this album is different from your previous work is an understatement. I was given the chance to hear the album early, and it is vastly different in terms of feel and tone from anything that you've done previously, for, the obvious 20-plus string reasons, but also for not so obvious reasons. What clicked in your brain that this was an album that you wanted to do for your discography?
Oh, man. So the decision came about probably between like Christmas and New Year's. Mm-hmm. And I was just coming out of a really bad depression and burnout, especially with leaving Cradle of Filth. And it was just like that little glimpse of hope, like to keep going and find like my fulfillment and my joy, find that again. And I was like, okay, I really want to do this. So then I survey my fans. Like I talk to them every year and a half. I send out a survey and want to know what they're thinking, what's going on in their lives. What are they into? Like, I just want to know what my fans are up to. And I asked a question in my last fan survey, like, if I did a harp album, is that something you'd be interested in? And it was like a hard 80% yes. Like, they were like, yeah. And it didn't surprise me because the demographic in which my fans are in, we come from the time of MTV Unplugged, so like, it just totally made sense. I was like, all right, this is going to work. I just kept going with it and I was having so much fun, and there's just so much love poured into that album for it's celebrating 10 years of being a solo artist, and then like closing that chapter and looking towards the future and thinking about like what do I want to do next, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. I feel like it definitely is pushing forward towards a new chapter in a way. Like, obviously, I feel like the metal side of you is not going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
No,
but I feel like in terms of yeah, that's good to hear. Well, in this album, I feel like, in a way, like it felt like you found your tonal center, from what I can tell, in terms of like how well your vocals fit in the mix, but as well as
thank you,
as well as how like the atmosphere that's built around the harp and the strings and everything going on. It felt like it was as well as, you know, the new songs, obviously, but the old songs that were redone for this album. It felt like that. Stripping them back into like just a harp and some strings in your voice, that's how you know that you have a good song on your hands. Because if you can strip it all back, all the bullshit, all the elements, and just keep it simple and still make it sound amazing, then you've got a simple man right there.
Oh, cheers. Thank you. I mean, that's kind of what I strive to do. I mean, I always say, like, if I, other than my crazy classical music, black metal band Antiqua, I don't expect us to strip that down anytime, even though I am writing the piano now to stand on its own as a composition, but that's the point. No, yeah, I've always wanted to do that. I'm like, you know, if all my rock songs, like, start that way. They start with just me on the piano or on the harp or singing in the air, you know, I really want it to be something that can be translated to other, I guess, formats. And that's what I've always strived to do. And it's really fun when it becomes like a full rock band or hard rock, heavy metal song. But then when you just strip it back, that's when it's like, that was so much fun. I mean, some of it was challenging, but I was stuck in lockdown with my poor producer, Tyler. Like, we had nothing else to do. So.
Well, lockdown always brings out the best ideas in everyone. It's always good when that ends up happening. But a funny coincidence here, I'm sure this is nothing. I was looking at the release date for this album, and I noticed something. Worlds Away comes out in October.
Yes.
Martyr also came out in October.
2 days apart.
Now, this may be a stupid question, but if a third album was to release in October as well, like, what's going to will planets align or something? Will the gates open up? Will vampires be on the loose? What awaits us at the end of this grand plan? Do you know, or is this just coincidence?
Well, I mean, the vampire's already out on the loose at night.
Oh, well,
so, like,
okay, perfect.
There's nothing we can do about that. I don't know. We kind of laughed. I was talking with my team here at the label, and we're like, okay, let's do this day, release the singles on this day, blah, blah, blah. And then we, like, go to look, we're like, you know, the 1 year anniversary of Martyr is, like, 2 days after Worlds Away comes out, and I'm like, so who knows? Maybe October 10th next year, y'all will get Antiqua. Like, it was so funny. We're like, what is going on? Like, there's a certain set of days, and I think when I was in Cradle, did Cryptoriana come around that time? I don't know. Something about October. It's a good month.
I don't remember, honestly. I remember I reviewed that album for the channel, but I don't remember when that came out.
It was either September or October.
Yeah, I'd have to look into it afterwards, but that if it came out in October, that would be a hell of a coincidence.
Yeah.
Cause I saw that. I was like, hold up. What other Lindsay Schoolcraft releases came out in October? Thankfully, it was just those two. And thankfully, no prophecy is being fulfilled. But nonetheless,
not yet.
Not yet. Time will tell. But
yes.
So that's good. That's good. So going into Worlds Away, I want to take the time now to actually go through Worlds Away with you. You know, talk about the album's conception, your thoughts on any particular track, et cetera, et cetera. But because it's not just, you know, harp covers of your previous work, there's also new songs on here. Starting off with the title track, Worlds Away. Tell me about that one, and how'd that song come about?
Oh, man, that one was actually supposed to be on Martyr, but it was written too late. Like, it was around the poor Rocky, man, right? Working with me has got to be tough. And we were at like 17 songs for Martyr, and we had to be like, okay, we need to just cut it at 13 and call it a day, because we had so much fun writing together. We kind of like didn't think like, oh, hey, like we need to chop it down and just focus on an album right now. Like, stop. Like, you know, we had like a really electronic, like rock song, very Nine Inch Nails sounding. And then we were working on Emily, which I still don't know what to do with that track. And then Breakable. And then there was Worlds Away, and Worlds Away was just half done. And at the time, and it was about like never really telling someone how I truly felt about them, and then them being like worlds away, and there was nothing I could do about it. And there was a lot of that hopelessness. So then I for months tried to figure this thing out on the piano. Like, I come back to it and I'm like, this sounds too much like Coldplay. Like, I'm not digging it. And then I brought it to the harp, and it was just like, boom, this is like where this song belongs. This is exactly what it should be. And then lockdown happened, and it really, I kept a lot of the old message of the song, but also like what a lot of people were going through with like isolation and feeling worlds away from everyone. And it was of the time. It was just meant to be. So yeah, I'm just really happy it finally has a home and it's coming out. And that song is very near and dear to my heart, because I'm being very honest in that song. Like, I'm a hopeless romantic at heart, and like, it's where I can just, I don't want drama in my personal life, but there's always room for drama in my music. So I just pour it all into that.
Well, I mean, drama in music, that's the foundation of most rock and metal. Like,
exactly.
Yeah. I mean, with metal, obviously you got to add a bit more blood and guts, but still drama, lots of drama.
Lots of anger and sadness all mashed up.
Exactly. So going further into the album, we've got a few songs that you've previously released. Savior, obviously from Martyr, Darkness Falls, and Fading Star, I believe, were from your debut EP, I believe, which was Rushing to the Sky.
Fading Star was on its own. Yeah, Rushing to the Sky, I brought over, Darkness Falls, Masquerade, You Are Mine. Mm-hmm. Those are the ones that I brought over from the Rushing Through the Sky EP. And then, I couldn't just abandon Fading Star, because I went to Australia at the end of 18 going into 19, and I did like a small tour with my harp. It was really fun. I got to DJ and play harp to a yoga class. I got to catch up with Zen. It was just like the best. And not saying like meditating, like being Zen, like my actual best friend Zenwar of Naval Viscaris. Like, it was just such a cool time. And during that tour, I wrote Fading Star as a harp version, and the people just freaked out when I started playing it live. They're like, wow, like that was so neat. And then, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to do it one last time and put it on this album, because it was part of the past 10 years, So, it was quite the collection of music, like putting all that together, deciding on everything.
Well, I definitely have a bigger question about Savior. Obviously, sure. one of the more favorites off of Martyr, in my opinion. What was it like trying to transform that song into from this heavy metal Evanescence type of song into this very atmospheric harp thing? Was there any real struggle you had transforming it into a softer version of itself?
No, because it's actually, I didn't really realize this until I took some theory lessons with Richard Shaw when I was in Cradle and we were on the road one day. I found out that Savior's actually in a mode. And on the harp, you cannot be chromatic. Like, you have to stick to that scale on the harp, right? I mean, you can move things around a little bit. I'm lazy, so I kept it in the mode, and then it's very Middle Eastern sounding. So I just worked with the mode that I had, and I loved doing that version. It just came so naturally. It was so haunting, and almost like, the harp came from Egypt. It almost sounds Egyptian to me. So I was just like, this is neat. This is really neat.
Yeah, it definitely has a very exotic vibe in both versions, of course. But this one, I feel like that was more exemplified. If I was to guess, as a theory nerd, Phrygian or Phrygian dominant?
Oh gosh, you know what? I'll have to get back to you. I have it written down somewhere. I think you're right. It was either Phrygian or like the one before or after it. I don't remember. My brain is just fog. But yeah, I do have it. I think you're right. I think that was the one.
Okay, yeah. I myself have written a few things in Phrygian. It's very for its very own kind of thing. So going further into the album, I do want to talk a bit more about. Dance on the Strings, I believe, is one of the new ones that has been previously unreleased. Tell me about that song.
Yeah, that one is very, very old. It was actually supposed to be on my first EP, Rushing Through the Sky.
Really?
But then I ran out of time and money. I was, pre-Cradle era of my life. And I was like, if I want to do this song, I want to do it big. Like, it was I remember it being very inspired by Camelot's ghost opera for some reason. And for years I tried to slam it out on the piano, and again, it wasn't working. And then I brought it to the harp, and then it just started like flowing like no one's business. And I'm like, damn, like this is crazy. So anytime anything doesn't work on the piano anymore, I'm just going to toss it on the harp and see where it goes. That's my new thing that I've learned. And yeah, it was really nice to revisit. It's the story, like it sounds a wee bit juvenile, and it's okay, but like it was, I was in an old band, and me and the keyboardist of that band were very close, and they started dating someone who was just very controlling, took over their life, ruined our friendship. And it was very hard. It was a very heartbreaking experience. But the more I talk a lot with my fans on Twitter, the more I talked about it, the more I realized so many people have gone through that, where they lose their bud, like genders reversed, whatever, to this controlling relationship. And it's just devastating, so that's what I wrote Dance on the Strings about, because it's like, there's strings attached, and there's the imagery of like losing your friend because of this controlling person. So it was really fun to revisit, and I'm glad that it's done. Like, I've been reading so many books lately about self-discovery as a creative, and just sometimes it's more, even if it's like not the greatest song ever, the fact that you've finished it, there's like a level of liberation and relief knowing like, hey, well, at least, I finished it. I tried my best. So It's so nice that Dance on the Strings is done and it's out there, and like it's really moody. And I was so I saw the lyric video. We just completed the lyric video. It's nothing crazy, but it just really was like, oh man, I'm so glad it's out there now. It can stop. I feel like these songs that want to be born, so to say, they visit me at certain times. And they're like, hey, don't forget about me. Remember this melody? You're supposed to write it down. And the minute it's all like recorded and out there, that song leaves my brain. I don't even remember what Dead of Winter sounds like sometimes, because it's done. It's out there. Like, I don't have to think about it anymore. So that's one of my things as a songwriter. So it's just nice that it's out, and now I can just, make room to focus on birthing other songs.
Well, I don't think you're alone in that one when it comes to like forgetting about songs, sort of like not forgetting per se, but all of a sudden, like, you finish the song, it's kind of out of your brain. Meanwhile, anything else will not get out of your head.
Oh yeah.
I know from my own personal experience, I have too many riffs, melodies, et cetera, that are still stored up here, even though they're written down, but they're not done. And so they're like constantly nagging at you,
Yeah.
It's one of those things. You just gotta try to get them out as fast as possible, I guess, or just try to finish them.
Yeah, anything like that. I'm suffering with that with Antiqua right now, because there's so many like melodic dark string melodies that just come in and out of my head, and I'm like, God, was this what it was like for like Bach and Beethoven and like and Mozart? Like, what were they going through? Because I'll just be sitting there, and all of a sudden this beautiful, lush, dark string melody will like get in my head, and I'm like, oh God. And then I actually, so funny, I saw a meme recently. I sent it to everyone in Antiqua, and I was crying laughing. And it's like, you think like Beethoven saw God when he wrote Ode to Joy, and now it's just used during food fights and movies. And I'm like, oh my God. So true. Like, I was just like, I really hope like that's my case. But anyway, maybe I am seeing God, but my string melody will be to like every, Terminator remake extended movie, and the God knows what.
Don't worry. 20 years down the road, worlds away, the title track will be used in some random CW drama one day. I promise you that.
I knew it. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So I wanted, finishing off the album, I wanted to ask you about Warn Me. I've been looking through your discography. I feel like I know nothing about Warn Me. Yeah, tell me about that song. Right. Like, is it a cover or is it something else?
It is mine. It was a B-side for Martyr.
Oh, okay.
There's like a few copies left. If you want, I can send you one. We have like an extended storybook version digipack, and it has like 2 bonus songs, and it's Betrayal and Warn Me. So Warn Me is a really dark track. I played it live in Toronto last year.
Yeah. I do remember hearing that song, honestly, but it's something, I don't know, like I feel like I've never heard anything about. I recognize the name, but anything else seems like it was like it came out of thin air.
Yeah, it was one of those. I took advice from an A&R person on what the order of my album should be, and I feel like I should have never made that a B-side, because it was everyone's favorite on the team. But yeah, Warn Me is a very dark track. It's actually one of the first originals that me and Rocky started working on. And at the time, I missed the chance to go through the haunted forest in Romania due to just a rough day on tour, and it was, I was really bummed out that I never got to go. But then I just wrote this poem about like what I thought it would be like going into that forest for, say, you were like captured by the witches and who knows what. But I really had a fun time, like just writing about folklore and writing poetry while I was traveling on a tour bus. And that music really invoked that in me. And then I got the whole team on board, and man, that track, like I love the rock version, but yeah, the stripped down version kind of happened last minute. I ditched the cover. I was going to do a cover and it wasn't coming out the way I wanted it to. And then I started playing Warn Me on the harp, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this is good. This is a good idea. So
this is how we end our album.
Yeah,
this is how we do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a weird way to end such a lullaby, like soft album, and then at the end it's like, here's Warn Me, who's been dying in the woods by the hands of witches. my mom right now would be like, I'm not surprised, but it is.
I mean, to be fair, you ended the last one with lullaby itself, so I mean, ending your albums with a creepy vibe is definitely like a creepy dark vibe is definitely nothing new here.
Exactly.
Yeah. You were talking quite a bit about Antiqua this entire time. So with the whole we're all stuck in quarantine and can't go out thing, obviously you've had a lot of time to work on multiple projects, such as, obviously Worlds Away, but also apparently a new single from Antiqua. Now, obviously, you can't give away everything about it without spoiling any surprises, but...
I'll try not to.
Yeah, but what can you tell us about this upcoming single?
Well, we're going into the studio next month, and it should be out this winter, hoping for before Christmas, but if worse comes to worse, it'll show up before the snow in Canada melts. So, it's going really well. It's definitely a challenge. We're from 5 different countries, and a poor lead singer stuck in Australia. And yeah, it's hard communicating. Like I do my work during the day, and then we talk until my wee hours of the night. And it's so weird, but we make it work, and it's going really good. I really enjoy that project because it's like there's no rules for me. I'm not trying to sound like anything that was before. So I'm just pouring out all my ideas more in a classical vein on strings and piano. And I'm also getting to write lots of Gregorian and Orthodox chants. And I'm singing in a new style too that I never thought possible. Like as I get older, my voice is changing, and there's a lower register to me that I've never tapped in with my solo, and Cradle never really gave me the chance because it was all speeches, classical, or the whole Liv Christine vibe. So I'm having the best time ever with Antiqua, and we're all really enjoying it, and everyone really gets along, and we're all really, really excited. But I think it's so nice. Me and Zen are like twins. Like we share a lot of the same creative ideas and energy, and we really inspire one another. We feed off of each other, even though we're worlds away. I
see what you did there.
So it's just so refreshing to have that. I feel really blessed. At the end of the day, when I think about all that I have to be grateful for, the fact that I get to have a band with one of my best friends, and we're continually just like enjoying creating together. I mean, that's like, gosh, like, no money, no fame, no egos, nothing like that getting in the way. It's such a blessing. And I don't even care like if Antiqua blows up or not. I don't. The fact that I get to do this and we're enjoying ourselves, that's the gift. That's really, truly the gift, and I hope that nothing ever deters from that.
All right. So, final question, and obviously I wanted to ask you the serial question again, but I already asked you that, so I will instead, for your second time, you gave me such a great answer last time, so instead I will ask you this new question. You are transformed into a unicorn that's constantly shitting sparkles everywhere. You're in this form for only 24 hours. What do you do with that time?
Send a lot of glitter bombs in the mail.
Yes.
Like a lot. Like get my best friend to like collect all the glitter and put it in envelopes and just send it to anyone who I think done me dirty, and just Oh, yeah.
That is such sparkly revenge right there. Oh, that'd be beautiful.
Yes.
All right. Well, Lindsay, thanks again for sitting down with me once again, this time over the podcast. It's been a great time this past 25 minutes. Wow.
Yeah.
So the new album, Worlds Away, is due out October 9th. It's going to be out everywhere, I'm assuming. Are there going to be any physical copies that people can purchase?
Yes, they can go to schoolcraftshop.com and you can get all the merch there.
All right, so you heard that right here, schoolcraftshop.com. Make sure you head there. And also, we had the chance, subscribe to her mailing list as well. I'm on it, and it's a lot of fun watching some of those emails come in. So, Lindsay, thanks again for coming on the podcast, and hope you have yourself a wonderful day.
You too, Tom. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
You're listening to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
So I found an interesting piece from Metal Hammer, actually, who was talking with Reba Mayers of Code Orange. She has a very interesting point of view when it comes to the metal genre, and that is that we are falling behind other genres. And the simple reason is because we have a sense of loyalty towards the older acts in the metal genre. But when the newer acts come around, not so much of a thing. Now, that got me pretty interested, seeing as Code Orange is a new act, along with plenty of other newer acts that are gaining traction, such as like Bad Wolves and Nothing More is a big one. That's my phone. Don't worry about it. So there are bands within the genre that are getting up there, but Reba does have a point. When it comes to metal, a lot of the newer bands seem to get treated not as good as the older bands. You know, the veterans, the ones who've been around since the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s even. The ones who have been around for quite some time. And that is a weird thing to think about. Why is that a thing? Why are we allowing that kind of thing to take place? And when it comes to how we treat the older genre, I think the older bands, I think I understand why. Because when you really get down to it, they've been around for a long time. They've been able to gain a lot of traction. They've been able to get a lot of a fan base. And back in the day, we were treating them better. This was a brand new genre back in the day. We seem to forget nowadays, like metal has been around for quite a while, but back when it was just starting up, when it was starting to get steam, bands like Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, if you want to count them, Metallica, Motorhead, like all these bands were just coming up. It was a brand new thing. We've never heard anything like this before. Nowadays, it's hard for anybody to find anything new. And I think we are still kind of in that kind of mentality from the back in the day. And I say that as kind of like a 180 from we don't have that kind of mentality, but we do. Because Code Orange, in a way, is very different from what we've heard. I can't really put my finger on it, but Code Orange has something to them that screams unique, that screams Code Orange. They are part of the hardcore, post-hardcore, metalcore genre, but something about them is not something you've heard before. So they were able to gain a lot of traction, especially when Forever came out back in 2017, I think it was. That's quite a bit ago. It's times like that when you have a band like this, where there's clearly an identity to them. And that is where these bands will rise. They will shine. Metal, at the end of the day, doesn't necessarily favor the veteran acts, in my opinion. I get where Reba's coming from, absolutely. Like as she points out, you look at festival lineups, a lot of them are bands from the 90s, 80s, etc., etc., etc. And when you look at Coachella, it's modern acts. I get the comparison, I really do. But really, what it boils down to is a different problem in the metal community. Our problem isn't necessarily that we're favoring the old acts, although we do that from time to time. The big problem, in my opinion, is that there's not enough innovation in metal. And this is something I believe Luke from Rock Reviews touched on in one of his videos not too long ago. But metal needs to innovate. It needs to push forward. And in my experience, when it comes to reviewing music, I've listened to a lot of metal music over the past few years that I've been doing this whole thing. And what I've learned is that there are the unique case every once in a while. But overall, it's the same shit, different day. You don't get anything new when it comes to the metal community. I've been trying to find something new when it comes to the promotional material that I get, and I'm not getting a lot, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of good, unique metal out there, and there's people with great ideas for music, but none of them are getting executed or executed well. If anything, like the ones that get pushed forward the most are the ones that you're familiar with. The thrash metal, the death metal, the hardcore metalcore, stuff that is very recognizable to you when you first hear it. It's safe, it's accessible, it's enjoyable. And yeah, it's enjoyable, but is it new? That's kind of the big question here. And honestly, I don't think metal has been doing much in the way of new things nowadays. And the reason why Coachella has been able to do that is because for all its faults, pop has been able to evolve. I mean, shoot, Billie Eilish is one of the more unique acts in the pop genre, in the pop realm nowadays. And yeah, I know, pop is a lot of problems. It has a lot of problems. I cannot stand pop myself. But you gotta admit, as a music fan, Billie Eilish is doing things better. She's more unique. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing with pop. Again, for all its faults, it favors innovation. Metal, it seems, does not. And I think that's where our biggest shortcomings are coming from. So I do understand where Reba's coming from with this one. 100%. It's one of those things where you got to understand that metal is hopefully going to change one day. And at the moment, we are not changing. So I understand where Reba's coming from. And I 100% agree with her. But at the same time, the problem is not that we are favoring the old acts. It's that we are not favoring innovation. On that note, we've actually, and this is kind of something that just popped up because I'm only just recording this. I have nothing written down for this. I literally just have the article in front of me where I'm reading pretty much just quotes from the interview. But when it comes to, I just kind of had this thought. I think it's because the reason why we're favoring the old acts is because of the lack of innovation. Newer bands that come out, or quote, newer bands, are choosing to focus on the past. They are constantly reminding us of bands that have done this sound better before. I've talked a bit about this on the podcast before, where newer bands will come out with a very familiar sound and they're just essentially copying the past. And that is one of the biggest driving forces, in my opinion. When you really get down to it, what are they doing different that hasn't already been done? Like, what are they doing with thrash metal, with death metal, with deathcore, with metalcore that hasn't already been done before by bands who have been around much longer? What is the token thrash metal band from Texas doing different than Slayer? What is the token deathcore band from Michigan that's doing anything different from Whitechapel or from Die Hard as Murder? What are these bands doing that is different? The answer is nothing. As far as I can tell, there's not a lot of uniqueness. The metal community has the biggest problem of a lack of a face, or too many faces to count. There's not enough identity within the metal community. So the newer bands that are coming out, unless they find a way to make themselves unique, like in the case of Code Orange, they are going to fall short. There's a reason why they end up going short. And of course, yeah, the mentality of the festivals is a big driving force here. I see where you're coming from with that one, Reba. I absolutely do. That is for sure something that we need to work on. But when the majority of the older bands have a bigger following and they have a sound that is unique to them, it's something that I feel like a lot of festivals are going to favor. I mean, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you want to favor an act that is really unique and easy to spot, easy to point out when you hear it? Or do you want an act that you don't know who they are when you first hear them? You put on one of their songs, you put on one of their albums, and you try to play the guessing game. You're not shown the album art, you're not shown the band name, or even the album name, or even the song name, and you're told to guess who they are. Who are you going to end up guessing? Like, are you going to guess anything? Are you going to guess it correctly, or are you going to guess the bands who have done it before? That's kind of where metal falls short. And I'm not trying to defend metal in this case, but this is something that needs to be looked. This is obviously a big problem in the metal community. But I think pointing towards the festivals and thinking you have the wrong mentality is not the right direction here, in my opinion. I think the big thing we need to look at is, why are they focusing on the older bands? It's not because of popularity either. We need to look at the metal genre as a whole and think, why has there been so little innovation? Why are the older acts getting favored over the newer ones? And why are certain newer acts getting favored over other newer ones? That's something that we need to keep in mind, because otherwise we're not going to innovate. Again, I've listened to a lot of metal music over the past couple years, and this is a trend I've seen a lot. We are not innovating. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say I know the answer to the problems, and I know how we can innovate. I don't. Honestly, if I had the answers, I would be telling you. And honestly, well, actually, no, who are we kidding? I wouldn't be telling anybody. I'd be keeping that to myself. But nonetheless, we need to find a way to innovate. We need to try new things as a metal community. We, as fans, as music listeners, we need to demand better. As musicians, we need to try better, because otherwise we're going to keep running into the same problem. Metal and rock will never innovate. That is a huge thing that we need to focus on, because otherwise, what are we doing with ourselves? Are we really going to sit in the past the entire time? We need to move forward. And if we don't, well, these smaller acts are never going to end up in any festivals. Whether you want that or not, that is up to us to decide.
You just listened to MRP, the Metal Robot Podcast.
Thanks for listening. You can check us out on the internet, YouTube, Metal Robot Reviews, Facebook and Twitter at The Metal Robot, and Instagram at The.MetalRobot. You can also check out everything we do on TheMetalRobot.com for videos, reviews, press, and so much more. I'm Tom McKay of Metal Robot Reviews signing off. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Click subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you in the mosh pit next time. Have a good night.